Is the recording working? Yeah, okay. Welcome to the meeting of the Warwick District Council Planning Committee on Tuesday, 14th of April 2026. Thank you for attending or watching online. I'm Councillor Bowe, Chairman of the committee. Please be aware that this meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and is also being recorded. Details on how the recordings are stored and how long they're retained for are available via the Council's website. As part of this Council's commitment to reducing use of paper, Councillors and officers may use electronic devices during the meeting. Emergency procedure. There are no planned tests of the emergency alarm. If the alarm does sound, everyone present must leave by the designated exit route. If the preferred route is blocked, use the nearest signed alternative route. Do not use the lift. Everyone must assemble at the designated point, which is Central Reservation in Regent Grove, in front of the police station. Members of the public and press should report to a member of the Town Hall staff who will be wearing yellow fluorescent jackets. Councillors and officers should report to the committee officer. Please do not re-enter the building until a fire officer advises it's safe to do so. I have alongside me, on my right, Mia Matthews, Principal Committee Services Officer, and Harriet Jones, who is her second day in post. Committee Service Officer, she's observing only to see how we get on. And Nigel Bell, the Legal Advisor. On my left is Development Manager Gary Fisher, Business Manager Sandeep Sahota, Principal Planning Officer Adam Walker, and Sophie Ladd, Planning Assistant. Members, can I check if you've all seen the update report and had an opportunity to read it? It was quite long, it was 6 pages. Everyone's happy, right? Apologies and substitutes. Councillor Matetsky is substituting for Councillor Phillips, and Councillor Harrison is substituting for Councillor Yella Pragada. Members, are there any other apologies? No. Members' declaration of interest. Anyone with a pecuniary interest will need to leave the room and will be called back in at the end of the item. Members are also reminded of the need to declare predetermination on any matter. Please, may I have any declaration of interest? There are none. Site visits. Does any member wish to record if they've undertaken a visit on their own for application on this evening's agenda? No. Minutes. We now need to confirm the minutes of the 10th of March 2026 meeting. In line with our procedures, all members can vote on the approval of minutes, although they may not have been there at the meeting. Need a proposer and seconder, please. Thank you. Councillor Knight's proposing. Seconder? Councillor Dixon. All those in favour of accepting them? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Now down to business. The procedure for each application will be as follows. Each application will have a presentation from a planning officer. This is followed by registered speakers who will be invited to address the committee. I must ask that all speakers stick to their allotted time. Please can all speakers speak directly into the microphones, and if necessary, move the microphones closer to you and ensure there are no devices in the way of the microphone. This will enable you to be clearly heard both here and on YouTube. Following registered speakers, the committee will then debate the application. During the debate, members, including myself, may well raise technical questions and issues to which the planning officers or advisors may need to respond, and I will normally invite them to do so. Please can I remind everyone that no officer or councillor will be permitted to address the committee without my permission. The committee will then make its decision based on the information within the report, any representation at the meeting, and the content of its debate. Once the decision is made, I will announce it after the vote. For the benefit of visitors attending the committee, all applications will be dealt with in accordance with the current National Planning Policy Framework and the Council's adopted local plan policies, which set out a presumption in favour of sustainable development, unless there are material planning considerations that indicate otherwise. Applications are considered against policies contained in local neighbourhood development plans that have been approved following a public referendum. Applications in accord with the local plan will usually be permitted. Application must only be refused where there are valid planning reasons for doing so. This will help to avoid legal challenges against decisions and avoid unnecessary legal costs to the council and council taxpayer. Please note that I've already agreed, if needed, the meeting will adjourn at a suitable point somewhere around 2 hours into the meeting to allow for a comfort break. Finally, whilst I and all the committee members fully appreciate the importance of decisions being made this evening and that they may well generate strong feelings, I take the opportunity to remind everyone to remain calm and courteous at all times. There aren't any actions for me to update you on from the previous meeting, so we can move to the first application, agenda item 5, W/25/0265, Coventry Airport, Coventry Road, Baggington.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This is a reserved matters application in relation to the development of the approved battery manufacturing facility on the Coventry Airport site. This shows the site in question, which is the existing airport with the site edged red. And then this aerial photograph shows the site in some more detail. So we've got the airport in the middle. You can see towards the south, there's a lot of existing and new commercial development. So we've got the Middlemarch Business Park and Industrial Estate down here. The Gateway South or Segro Park development that's under construction over here. To the north, we've got more established or other established commercial development, the Stonebridge Trading Estate, and quite a modern building over here, which is the UK BIC facility. And this site is one that members looked at quite recently, which is the Whitley South development site. And then over towards the northwest, lies Baggington Village and some other open countryside towards the west. So this is so taking it back to the outline planning permission for the Gigafactory. This is the approved parameters plan, and I'd just like to highlight some key aspects because this is fundamental to the assessment of the reserve matters, because these parameters guide the reserve matters submissions as and when they come forward. So this established a set of parameters for the future development. We've got the two built development zones, so it shows the extent of the built development area. That's split into Zone 1 and Zone 2, and each of those zones corresponds with maximum permitted building heights. So in Zone 1, that's the lower height area, which is up to 26 metres, and then in Zone 2, that permits taller buildings up to 36 metres in height. The parameters plan also imposes a restriction on the overall amount of floor space that can come forward through the reserve matters submissions. And you can see around the edge of the site there's a substantial landscape buffer, and members and a detailed design for that landscape buffer has been approved, and members considered that application back in December last year, and that will deliver a range of green infrastructure, public open space, a lot of tree planting, natural areas, and a bund down towards this part of the site as well that would help to screen the development. The outline permission also controls the use of the facility, and that's through the Section 106 agreement. So the development can only be used for the production and recycling of batteries and or low power technologies that fall within the B2 use class, which is general industrial. So that's controlled by legal agreement. Moving on to the detailed proposals then. So this is the master plan. This is showing the proposed site layout. You can see there's 7 main buildings plus a series of ancillary buildings. I'll just quickly run through those. So we've got Unit 1 and Unit 3, which are the 2 largest buildings, and they will be used for battery manufacturing. Sitting in between those is Unit 2, and that will be involved a facility for the preparation of precursor cathode active material and the production of cathode active material, which is an integral part of overall battery manufacturing operation, and it also involves a battery recycling facility as well. So the other buildings, these are shown as providing warehouse space. So we've got this Unit 4 down here, Unit 5, 6 and 7, and it's envisioned that they would provide warehouse space for supply chain product, and as you can see, the buildings of varying size. You You see also in terms of this run of buildings here, it's mentioned in the report, but it shows it well on this drawing with the green roof that would run down the buildings, and that incorporates some of the SUDS features and landscaping at each end of the site, and that mirrors the position of the existing runway, so it's a bit of a nod to the aviation history of the site. There's the mobility hub, which is discussed in the report, that's located up here. There's also a primary substation down here. The points of access, as you can see, there's 6 of those. They've all been approved under the outline planning permission, so they're already established. The main spine road running through the site, which connects access 1 and 5 and also links up to access 2, that's also been approved. That was part of the Reserve Matters application that members considered back in December. So just in terms of the amount of floor space that's being proposed as part of this scheme, it represents 85% of the consented quantum of floor space. So it's a lesser amount than what the actual outline permission allows for. So just to put a bit that master plan into a bit of a sort of more real world context and visualise that. So this is a visualisation that's been produced by the applicant. So this is looking at the site from the north towards Unit 1 in the foreground, and the recycling PCAM unit in the middle, Unit 3 and the other units just here. So you can see how it sits within the site's context, which is certainly towards the north and south, a commercial landscape. So I'll just run through the elevations for the units so members have an understanding of those. This is Unit 1, so this is essentially part of the Gigafactory, the battery manufacturing operation. The overall design approach has been to have a series of brother and sister buildings with the design of the larger buildings influencing the smaller ones. So this is, as I say, this is one of the biggest units on the site, 473 metres long. It's predominantly 21 metres in this section, rising to just under 26 metres here, and you can see the office elements on each end. The facing materials, there is a consistent theme across the development in terms of the facing materials. It's predominantly light grey tones, particularly to the upper sections of the building. That is intended to help the units blend in with the skyline and reduce their prominence within longer range views. And then there's secondary darker tones to provide contrast to the built form, help break up that bulk and mass. And breaking up the bulk and mass is also been attempted to achieve through that variation in height and variation in depth of the buildings themselves. So that's Unit 1. This is Unit 2. Now this is sat within Zone 2, so this is an area where it permits taller buildings. Part of the building is just under 36 metres, so up to the maximum, but it is a relatively limited amount of development that achieves that pretty much that maximum height. The rest of it's about approximately 26 metres. Unit 3, so that's Gigafactory as well, and that's essentially mirrors Unit 1. And then these are the warehouse units, so Unit 4 down in the bottom of the site. Unit 5, as you can see, it's essentially a variation on a theme. Unit 6, and then Unit 7, which is the smallest unit. That's closest to the Rowley Road, and that is a notably smaller unit, both in terms of footprint and height. So I'll just run through a few more visualisations, which again have been provided by the applicant, help members get an appreciation of the development. So this is looking towards Unit 1, so you can see the office element projecting here, creating some visual interest, green roof running down the buildings. Helps to emphasise that the contrast in terms of the material palette and the depth and the height of the buildings. And then obviously the spine road running through here, which will be a tree-lined boulevard in effect. There's quite a lot of landscaping that's already been approved and a generous amount of landscaping that's would also come forward through the individual plots. And this is just another view from the opposite end of the site, clearly shown more at night time, showing how it would look. So again, looking at the other end through the down the spine road. And then this is showing Unit 7, and it's just really gives a good flavour of the sort of the detailed design of the buildings, the material palette, and where you've got offices to create visual interest on the facade of the units. So to summarise the main points of this application then, it's a reserve matters application for the vertical build phase of the approved Gigafactory development at Coventry Airport. So members are considering the scale, appearance, landscaping and layout of the development. The outline permission established a set of parameters for the future built form, and that was in terms of imposing maximum limits on the extent of the built development area, the overall building floor space and building heights. And the proposals have been assessed against those parameters and they accord with them, and in fact represent a lesser quantum of development than consented under the outline permission. I mean, for want of a better phrase, that the developer's not maxing out what they've got planning permission for, that, both in terms of floor space and the heights of the buildings. The design of the proposals is considered to successfully mitigate the scale and massing of the buildings and would help the development to assimilate into the surrounding area. The buildings would also be surrounded by a substantial landscape buffer that's been approved under the previous reserve matters. From a highway safety point of view, the proposed scheme is considered to be acceptable. It's been assessed by both the County Landscape, County Highways Authority and National Highways, and it's no issues have been raised, no objections have been raised, and the design of the scheme would help to facilitate sustainable and active travel opportunities. That's particularly through the primary mobility hub, and there would be smaller outlier mobility hubs running through the whole site. And the overall aim for the development is to allow for sort of the last mile connection. So members of staff, when they're arriving by bus, would have opportunities, for example, to use e-bikes, e-scooters for that final leg of the journey to take them to their place of work. Noise and air quality are relevant to this reserve matters because there are conditions on the outline planning permission which require certain details to be provided with the reserve matters. So that's noise assessments and air quality assessments. Both of those have been provided. There's been negotiation and back and forth on those with the applicant involving environmental protection. And we've ultimately got to a position where officers are satisfied with the findings of those assessments, the detailed design, and officers are satisfied that that can be controlled through conditions. So finally then, yeah, the details provided are in respect of the layout, scale, appearance and landscaping of the built phase of the development, and overall are considered acceptable. So the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. We have a number of speakers, starting with Councillor Walter Bush, Parish Council, objecting. Well, take Terry. I don't mind who I take. I'll take you all in the end. You have 3 minutes when you start.
Councillors, I sat here in December and from a personal perspective, nothing has changed. I still have 2 young children. Their safety is still my #1 priority. This proposal was already found in 2022 to be contrary to the local plan and harmful to Greenbelt. That has not changed. What also hasn't changed is that key impacts remain unassessed. Noise, emissions, operational detail and environmental requirements. There are still too many unknowns to justify approval. When I explained this to my 9-year-old, she said something very simple. Please don't build this thing in our village. That's not politics, that's instinct. Because at its core, this is about people feeling safe in their homes. And since we last met, we now have real-world evidence of the risks involved. On March the 8th this year, a fire at Vape Shop in Glasgow, believed to involve a lithium-ion battery, destroyed an entire 4-storey building. 250 fire officers attended over 4 days with a 1.25 million of public money committed to recovery. That is one small unit. This proposal is on a completely different scale. More batteries, more fire load, greater risk. Lithium-ion fires spread rapidly and reignite, creating a cocktail of toxic fumes which, if inhaled, cause severe long-term respiratory harm. And we're talking about homes within 70 to 100 metres. No clear evidence shows safety can be guaranteed at this scale, and funding alone is not sufficient. Economic benefit cannot be traded for people's safety. Many feel early phased applications are gradually changing the status of this land, enabling easier future development opportunities. Coventry Airport was designated Greenbelt to protect Baginton and Bubbenhall, yet this proposal continues to erode that protection. What is public money being invested in here? A confirmed viable plan or something else entirely? Where's the sense in continuing to invest in a project with no confirmed buyer, no guaranteed delivery and increased evidence risk? To suggest too much has been spent already, why stop now, is not sound decision making. So the question is not whether jobs will be created, it's whether this is the right development in the right place. Because if something goes wrong at this scale, it's not the developer who lives with the consequences, it's the families, the residents, the community. I sit here tonight doing what you were elected to do, represent and protect the people. So I respectfully ask you to look again. This proposal still conflicts with policy. It still carries unresolved risks. Please defer this application.
Thank you. Who would like to come next? That's Councillor Ben Edwards from County Council. You have 3 minutes.
I want to talk about the County Highways response referenced in the committee report because I can't find it on the planning portal. The committee report mentions under the summary of representations that, I quote, WCC Highway Authority considers the applicant's traffic modelling to be accepted and the Highway Authority is satisfied with the traffic impacts. Cannot see any document on the planning portal substantiating this statement. Under access, parking and active travel, the report states, and I quote, both National Highways and the local highway authority have been consulted on the application and accept the detailed design. The National Highways consultation response is published. The Coventry Highways response is published. The County Highways response, I can't find it. County might have accepted the scheme. They might have imposed conditions. Without the document, members of the public cannot tell whether the county response is supportive, conditional, or qualified. This is important for any application, but especially this one, because this application is making the news, with $1 million in taxpayers' money being spent on it so far, and media reports claiming advanced negotiations and site visits giving the impression of deals about to be struck, when actually there's been little progress made. To the public, this looks awful. Oh, it also looks awful that there's original material was a single building and now a seven-unit estate. But I'm being challenged as to whether my department are playing to the letter of the system or whether they know more than they say. I do not think they do. And I'm sure my county highways officers are hiding nothing and have fulfilled all that has been asked of them. They are not here tonight. I don't believe they've been asked to attend. On an application as high profile as this, we cannot afford even the perception of procedural oversight that comes from missing documents. So my request is simple. And that is that I, as someone who sits on the County Regulatory Committee and hears planning applications, would do in your place. Defer the decision today, take the time to publish everything already submitted by County Highways and any other body, and obtain formal opinions on the concerns raised this evening. Because lack of published responses means you and I cannot demonstrate that the committee has weighed up all material considerations, and by extension, we cannot demonstrate that the procedural transparency so vital to remain is present, that's so vital for us to remain credible on applications like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walter Bush.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Walter Bush, representing Baginton and Bubbenhall Parish Councils. Let me be absolutely clear, this application is not ready for determination. You are being asked to make this decision without critical infrastructure details being made clear in this application, leaving the committee in a questionable position. The officer's report confirms on page 4, condition 33, access details remain unresolved and subject to a separate technical approval. Yet the conditions related to a fundamental redesign of Silver Eagle Way, not a minor detail, but a core piece of infrastructure. The new traffic island roundabout at Gate 5, replacing the existing T-junction, is proposed. This will materially reduce the road capacity by an estimated 30% and reduce for the foreseeable future. There is no comprehensive traffic impact assessment. There is no impact assessment for the communities and residential developments ongoing in the village, located just 75 metres from the proposed traffic island. There has been no public consultation on this traffic island. This redesign has never been brought before this committee for scrutiny. Members should ask themselves, how can it be considered as a sound planning? The submitted highways evidence does not even assess the impact of Gate 5. That is not a minor oversight, it's a fundamental gap in information. Now consider the scale of what you are being asked to approve. Segro Park runs with 6,000 employees, or will run with 6,000 employees, 2,000 per shift in, 2,000 per shift out, plus 4,000 HGV traffic movements per 24 hours. The battery plant, Gate 5 traffic volumes are not confirmed. All of this is funneled through a junction that has not been properly assessed. The likely outcome is not uncertain, it is very predictable. Congestion, displacement, accidents and network failure. So where does this unrestricted traffic go? Into Baginton, Bubbenhall, Stoney and surrounding rural roads that are wholly unsuitable. Councillors, approving this application today would mean accepting unknown impacts, denying residents the opportunity to be properly informed and heard. This is not transparency, accountability or democracy. You're being asked, in effect, to approve first and understand later. We urge you to refuse this application or at the very least postpone it until the full transport modelling and infrastructure design and public consultations are complete. Anything less would be premature and risk undermining the confidence in this process. Thank you.
Mr. Robert Barnes. 3 minutes when you start.
For this application. In 2022, the committee approved an outline application establishing the principle of development for a gigafactory at this site. That decision marked the start of the district's journey to play a leading role in the growing global market for electric vehicle battery manufacturing. But this Reserved Matters application concern access, traffic, the use of the site as an airport, its release from the Greenbelt, or the site's redevelopment for battery manufacturing. Those issues were resolved when the outline was granted. Today, you're going to be asked to consider one thing: whether the design, layout, scale of the buildings and landscaping are acceptable. The outline permission allows development within a fixed set of parameters, the use of the site for a gigafactory, maximum number of buildings, maximum floor space and heights. The reserve matters before you today sit comfortably with all of the approved parameters. Indeed, the floor space now proposed is about 15% below the maximum. On landscaping, a significant green perimeter has already been approved through previous reserve matters, including woodland, parkland, orchards, hedgerows, meadows and wetland. The buildings proposed today will sit within that green framework, with further planting and drainage features on each plot to soften views further. Noise and air quality assessments have been prepared on robust worst-case assumptions and scrutinised carefully by your officers. That work has been accepted. As additional guarantees, conditions are proposed requiring the analysis to be verified prior to construction of buildings, ensuring there will be no unacceptable impacts. Your officer's report is clear and its support for the application is unequivocal. For a development of this scale, the absence of significant third-party objections, including from technical consultees, is striking, and your officer's report notes that many local residents recognise the benefits of this project and what it brings to the local economy. The application sits fully within the approved parameters of the outline permission. You're not being asked to revisit the principle of development, but the importance of this decision cannot be overstated. We're operating in a period of significant global trade disruption and intensifying international competition for clean energy investment. Investors and prospective occupiers need confidence that this site is deliverable, that Warwick is open for business and ready to take its place as an international player in battery manufacturing. A decision to approve today would give investors and occupiers the certainty they need to commit. I ask you to accept your officer's recommendation and approve that.
Thank you. Not quite sure where the interference came from. And the final speaker is Councillor Josh Payne, Ward Councillor. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll keep my comments fairly brief. As the planning agent was saying, leading on from the approval of the applications last time, both for outline permission and the reserve matters, I'd argue that Planning Committee now needs to grant the final part of what the applicant is asking for so that the integrated package can be delivered in a cohesive way. Coventry Airport, sadly, is going to have to vacate the site of the Gigafactory in June. And I appreciate that residents in Baginton have expressed frustration and sadness over that. And I think at this stage, given the circumstances and where we are, it would be wrong, in my view, to add to those frustrations by leaving a vacant site. I think we need to press on with what's been previously agreed as an alternative. Just looking at the context in the district a second, unemployment figures were released a couple of months back, which were not encouraging. And I think that the employment benefit for the district as a whole and for the ward shouldn't be downplayed. Other councillor colleagues have mentioned that there was a risk of an investor not coming forward before, but just to give a quote from Steve Bowyer, who's head of the West Midlands Investment Zone, a quote that's recently appeared in the press. He said at the scrutiny committee of the West Midlands Combined Authority recently that there is actually good news on getting an investor finalised. And he said, Mr. Bowyer said, I'm not exaggerating that because planning permission, i.e. the outline planning permission, is in place, inquiries coming through are significant, and other media reports have corroborated that there are apparently at least 4 potential investors expressing interest in the site. So we are close to getting an investor, I would argue, from what people are saying. I don't mean to disrespect what councillor colleagues have said, and I appreciate that the parish council in Baggington is against this, and I appreciate that Bubbenhall Parish Council is against this. But other constituents of mine in the ward have given a more nuanced, moderate and qualified view about the benefits of this application. People express concerns to me, but what they also say is that in terms of how Baggington evolves as a community and as a village, what's really important is to get decent public transport in place and to get the village shop back and to get high quality services in the village consistently delivered. And I think on balance, yes, those same residents have expressed concerns, but if we're going to get a shop back and we're going to get decent public transport, it's actually worthwhile allowing this project to evolve and allowing some carefully management development around the village to take place. I'm not in favour of emasculation of the village, but I am in favour of this particular application in all the circumstances and considering all of the context. So in conclusion, the sooner that we finalise this, the more local councillors can develop a meaningful relationship going forward with the investor. And I appreciate one resident has expressed again very strong concerns about the safety of lithium. I'm not downplaying those concerns, but if we approve today and local councillors can play their part in getting a relationship going as soon as possible with the investor, that's the route to getting the right mitigations in place so that there aren't unnecessary health and safety hazards which are unfair to residents. So appreciate that there are concerns about this, but on balance, considering the conditions, the Section 106 agreement and the previous permissions that have been granted, I'm asking Planning Committee please to give this the green light. Let's try and make the best of this and help for the employment benefits across the district. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes our speakers committee. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions of detail. First of all, the Coventry City Council's comments were about the green walls, and since we're looking at the look of the buildings as one of the important things we're looking, can we have some sort of clarity about whether green walls are included, or if not, or what the sort of requirements are for putting them in? And the second one relates to the parking. I didn't quite understand the sort of surface that's being put on parking. This is a huge site with a lot of covered areas. How are the officers confident that we have sufficient water runoff and use of ponds and permeability of the parking places so that there will not be any flooding incidents or anything resulting from this massive development? Thank you.
Through you, Chair. So picking up on the question around green walls, there aren't any proposed as part of the scheme. Green walls were mentioned in the approved design code for the development, but that was in the context of they could potentially be seen to be necessary. So the design code was approved before the detailed scheme came forward. Green walls were being considered, or it was proposed as a possibility to help mitigate the visual impact of the development if the strategic landscaping perhaps wasn't sufficient enough and there was a feeling that they needed to add more greenery into the development. The detail scheme doesn't include green walls. The county landscape team has queried that point. She was comfortable that them not being included wasn't necessarily a specific requirement. I think that's particularly given the extent of landscaping around the site and the nature of the detailed planting proposals that have been approved, plus that the on-plot landscaping as well. So there were some changes to the landscaping team proposals in terms of the amount of tree planting within the site, particularly in the car parks themselves and around the car parks. But officers are satisfied that green walls wouldn't necessarily be essential for this development overall.
So can I just clarify? So the suggestion that there might be green walls in the design code was not a mandatory or anything. The design code, it was one thing to be considered rather than mandated. Is that correct?
Yeah, very much so, yeah. It was
Okay.
just a suggestion as a possibility of something that could be included. But that's not been carried through to the detailed design. And then your second question, Councillor, so around the surfacing and drainage. There's a detailed surface water drainage strategy that has been approved for this development. That was covered by condition on the outline permission. We've had details in to discharge that condition. That condition's been discharged. That was done in conjunction with in consultation with the lead local flood authority. And the lead local flood authority have also been consulted on this application. So they've seen the detailed scheme and they've raised no issues with this, with the proposals. And ultimately, the drainage scheme dovetails with this layout.
Thank you.
Councillor Margrave.
Thank you. Three questions relating to things that the speakers have said. One speaker commented about the highways response not being published. So is that true, and is it relevant? As the highway related information, was that resolved at outline, or is that something we're now considering? Well, I'll start with those two.
The comments from the county highways have come out of essentially informal email correspondence involving myself, and that's and the highways officers expressed their view, which is summarised within the committee report around the traffic modelling. They haven't raised any other issues as part of this application process. I should say that they were formally consulted on the application. It's just been a question of, because of the scale of it and the amount of time, it's ended up being a back and forth of emails. So that's the reason why there's nothing on the website, but it is, their comments are summarised in the report. So going on to the overall the transport assessment and those issues that have been raised. The short answer is that the transport assessment isn't relevant to this reserve matters. The longer answer is that this application is dealing with the scale, appearance, landscaping and layout of the site. So it's the internal layout of the site. The traffic impacts of the development, what this development would generate and how it can be accommodated on the highway network. That was all considered at outline stage because it goes to a matter of principle, and mitigation was secured through the outline planning permission in terms of financial contributions for highway mitigation works and through planning conditions. That's a similar case with the points of access as well. So access was approved at outline stage, and we've heard comments this evening around sort of concerns around access 5 and the use of this roundabout. So again, that's something that is outside of this application. The detailed design of those access points is addressed by a planning condition on the outline. And officers have considered, because we've got an approved spine road through this site, officers did consider how that would link in with these access points from both the transport and a noise point of view, and it was found to be acceptable as part of that previous reserve matters application. So yeah, I think in summary, yeah, the traffic impacts and the road junctions don't fall to be considered here.
Okay, thank you. The one more question was, it talks about condition 7, but I couldn't see condition 7 in the report unless I'm looking at the wrong place. It seems to stop at 5, and that was to do with the fire-related stuff. Am I right, or is it?
Potentially a typo. There's 2 additional conditions in the update report. So that's 6 and 7. So 7, so the additional condition that's been added in the update report, that relates to noise.
Thank you. I'll check that.
Okay. Councillor Aylesworth.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think part of my question's already been answered in that last bit from you Adam, so thank you about traffic. I suppose my wider concern is that what I see here is this is an almost entirely speculative proposal in the sense that we don't really know who the battery manufacturer will be or what they will actually want. This is an attempt to provide something that the developer, Coventry City Council, think they might want. So my question really is about, well, what powers, I suppose, are if the developer, the actual developer, assuming one is found, wants something that is quite different from the one that was approved under WP 21-1370. So if they want to do something different that may increase or decrease the amount of traffic or the parameters that we're currently considering, how does the council deal with that?
So the fact at this stage there isn't a named occupier or end user for the development, that's not material planning consideration. The outline permission is very tightly controlled in terms of how this development can be used. So the description of development is for a battery manufacturing facility, so it does what it says on the tin, that's what it has to be. But more than that, within the Section 106 agreement, there is a part of that very tightly controls the nature of the end user who can use this facility, and it has to be for production and recycling of batteries or low power technologies. And the council is also required to approve the occupier of the site as well.
So, sorry, I appreciate that. And nobody has a crystal ball as to what's going to happen. I appreciate that too. But this is an area where technology is moving at a rapid pace. So the requirements for a battery manufacturer in 2026 or 2027 might be very different to what they were in 2021 or whenever. So it's just about how those differences can be accommodated if it is something fundamentally different to what we're actually being asked to approve tonight. It's a general point. I appreciate that may not be a reason for voting against it.
If it were to be anything other than what the outline permission allows for, it would require a new planning application. So that would.
Okay, Councillor Teskey.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I think I'd just like to make a comment on highways first of all. I think it's very important for everybody to have transparency. And I think if conversations were had, and I understand that they're not a material consideration here, but if you're going to reference it in the report, then it should be backed up with the documents. So if there's an email exchange or something, I think in future for transparency to the committee and the public, we should have that as a minimum. But a couple of points I just want to raise, just going on to what Councillor Aylesworth said, that I know there's a lot of people here watching, and I think we have to be very clear on what we're actually being asked to do here today. So just picking up on the, there's not anybody in place to actually develop this site. It's not, can you confirm, it's not a planning consideration whether you have a developer or not, because as I understand it, anybody can put a planning application on any piece of land for anything, and we have to consider that application. Whether there is anybody to actually build it, develop it, is immaterial, and that's not a material consideration for us. Can you just confirm that for a start?
I can confirm that, Councillor, that's correct, yeah.
And secondly, when we go on to the fire hazards and everything, is that a material consideration, or is that something that is done by the health and safety executive, the fire service, etc., to make sure, you know, I'd expect every building has some sort of fire hazards and there has to be some sort of appraisal. Is that something we need to consider here or not?
Safety was considered as part of the original outline planning permission. In terms of safety and how it relates to this reserve matters application, It is a relevant consideration, particularly in terms of fire safety, and we did consult with the Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service on that. It's mainly around, because we're dealing with the layout of the site, it's ensuring that there is adequate provision for the fire service, and the applicants provided information to demonstrate how their detailed scheme meets with the fire services guidelines in that respect, and also in terms of the battery energy storage system element, which Councillor Dixon raised in the and is addressed in the update. So it's relevant up to a point, and we've consulted with the fire service, and they've not raised any objections.
Councillor Gifford.
Thank you, Chair. The application, as we got in a summary of the main points, the application deals with the vertical build phase of the approved battery manufacturing facility, the Gigafactory. Really to do with what we've got in front of us. It's essentially to do with the layout, the scale, the appearance, and the landscaping. That is the basis of what we're looking at. Obviously, the layout and the scale could affect something like fire safety or whatever, but I'm looking at, it would be difficult, I can't see how we could refuse on the fire safety grounds, given that Warwickshire Fire Service are happy, subject to conditions. The actual floor space is 85% of the maximum that was allowed in the outline planning permission. So it's actually slightly, although it's an enormous project, it's actually slightly smaller than it could have been. Highways matters aren't essentially something that we couldn't really refuse on highway matters if we felt inclined to do so, because it's not something which this application is really dealing with. So, am I correct on that? I mean,
In terms of highways matters?
yeah.
Yeah, the transport issues go back to the outline. It's not relevant to this reserve.
I can see, given that this is the nature of the application, which is not looking at the principle of a gigafactory, it's looking at some of the aspects, particularly layout, scale, appearance, and landscaping. There doesn't seem to be real concern about, I mean, obviously this layout, scale, appearance, and landscaping, it's a very large project. It's a project, if there was a manufacturer keen to take this on, it would be of national importance, possibly of international importance. But I can't see any reason. I can understand the concern some of the public have, but I can't see how we could refuse this application. And therefore, I would propose that we grant subject to the conditions and the officer's report. Thank you.
Through you, Chair, can I just confirm, Councillor Gifford, you're also proposing the additional conditions and the amendment to the conditions as listed in the update report?
Correct.
So I have a proposal. I have a seconder. Councillor Kennedy, I think was.
Yes, I would like to second that, but I'd also, if I may, raise the question of the point that Councillor Matetsky made. I think it's very important for transparency that the interchange with the Highways Authority, or at least a report on that, is published so that it's available to the public on the website. Whether that is that a condition to be imposed on, it's more, I think, for officers to make sure that that comes through. I'm not sure quite how to present that in the decision, whether it's an extra condition or simply a comment or...
Is it a comment?
Yeah, through you, Chair, I'll action that as an administrative process, yeah.
Sorry, could that maybe be recorded in the minutes so that we're aware that needs to be done?
So I have a proposal and second. I have two.
Sorry, Chair, just to confirm that's, I'll note that that's going to be done, but that's not going to form part of the decision, but I can note it in the minutes if you're happy with that.
I had two people indicating to speak just before. I'll take those two and then we move to a vote. So first one is Councillor Harrison.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was a question I meant to put up earlier. It's regarding, we talk about the impact assessments, the fact it borders on a very much rural area, the villages of Dublin Hall and Bagnington. I was interested in looking comment on lighting. Some of the slides were about night time, and then I thought, yes, how does this compare in terms of light assessment, which was considered part of conditional assessment 30 under the initial outline, condition 30. I wasn't sure if you had to make a comment about that, because I think lighting at night time would have could have a significant impact on residents in the area. You've obviously got the existing industrial estate, which I understand. However, I think some comment on the fact that the lighting, especially at night time, is being considered as an important factor would be useful. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, lighting is covered on condition 30 on the outline, so the developer will have to submit details to discharge that condition. So a detailed lighting scheme will have to be agreed with the local planning authority, so that will take into account potential impacts on residential amenity and ecology and the character of the area.
Okay, and the final speaker, Councillor Marbury.
Thank you. I'm struggling to find condition 7 where it talks about the fire safety conditions. In the update report, I can't see it, unless I'm looking in the wrong place altogether.
Yeah, I can clarify. I realised after you'd finished your question, it was it's condition 7 on the outline planning permission. It requires a scheme for fire hydrants to be submitted to and approved by the local planning authority.
And that includes the fire services and appropriate people saying that this is a safe place and they've got all of the mitigation in place so that the buildings next door don't go up in smoke if the battery plant does. Is it to that level?
That'll come through the detailed scheme. So some information has been provided around the fire hydrants, and there's a call-out strategy, for example, but that will go to the Fire and Rescue Service, and they will advise the local planning authorities to whether or not the scheme for hydrants is acceptable. But in terms of this reserve matters, it's around layout in terms of access for the fire tender vehicles, and then water supplies are covered by a condition on the outline planning permission, condition 7.
Yeah, the details about the fire response is on the ADOBS in response to Councillor Richard Dixon's question. Right, we now have a proposed and seconded with the additional amendments in the sheet. That's covered it all? Yeah. All those in favour of voting yes, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. That is clearly carried. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 9, which is W/25/1132, the Orchard, Coventry Road, Stoneleigh.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members, so this application relates to a site known as the Orchard, which is on Coventry Road in Stoneleigh. It's an outline application with all matters reserved except for the means of site access for the erection of 2 dwellings. This is a plan of Stoneleigh Village, which indicates the village envelope. And as you'll see from your report, the site is located just beyond the village envelope. However, there is a previous appeal decision, as part of which the inspector concluded that the site can reasonably be considered as being part of the village. And so that is a starting point which is set, if you like, by that appeal decision. The site is also located in the Stoneleigh Conservation Area. This slide is just to indicate the boundaries of the conservation area relative to the application site, which do run slightly differently to the village envelope itself. A site location plan indicating where this proposal is focused, and also identifying the land that's edged in blue, other land within the same ownership but that doesn't specifically form part of the planning application site, and an aerial image. A small number of photographs just to indicate where the site is. It's essentially on the road out of the village, and you've got several photographs there just showing the site boundary here and here, looking down into the village. Yeah, and then another photograph here identifying the bosky nature of the site, particularly the boundary, and that hedgerow which is shown there, which is proposed to be retained in the main as part of this proposal. There is a section of hedging to be removed to facilitate the site access, but other than that, it is to be retained. Just looking at the photograph on the bottom left-hand part of the slide there, the speed limit along the road is 40 miles an hour, which has been important in the highways consideration of the planning application. As you run down, or drive down rather, towards Stoneleigh Village, a little bit further down, the speed limit does change to 30, as I understand it. And then again, just a couple more photographs. The one on the left, looking past the site, out into the countryside, and the one on the right, looking down towards the village itself. Members, so you'll see from your report that there is some planning history to this site, a number of planning applications, and the first significant one is illustrated on this slide. This is going back to a proposal in 2018, and you'll note that the red line site on this proposal extends across the whole of the site, whereas the proposal before us this evening, the red line is a lesser part of that whole parcel of land. And that was a proposal for a single bungalow. This was refused as set out in your report. However, it was allowed on appeal, and this is the decision where the inspector came to the view that this site can reasonably be considered to form part of the village. We then move on a few years later, 2023, where there was a proposal for 2 dwellings at the site. Now, this was an outline application, but it did seek to discharge details of access and the layout of the site. So the layout that we see on that slide there did form part and parcel of that proposal, and that was refused. It was refused on the impact of, for the reason of the impact on the conservation area, on grounds of highway safety and ecological impacts. And there's a little bit more detail on that in your report. And again, the application site edged in red is the whole of that parcel of land. So a little bit of a larger application site than is before you this evening. And then later in 2023, a proposal for 2 dwellings. This was, again, an outline application. This proposal was just to discharge means of access with an access point here. And again, as set out in your report, that was refused for fewer reasons. So there wasn't an issue with highway safety. There wasn't an issue with the sort of layout of the proposals. That, of course, is principally because that wasn't shown as part of that application. But planning permission was refused in that instance on ecological and sustainability grounds, again, as set out in your report. And so this, excuse me, this is the proposal before members this evening. So that wider parcel of land, a substantial part of that is edged in blue. So that's land under the control of the applicant, but not actually forming part of the application before you. The specific application site is edged in red. This proposal, again, is discharging means of access, and this is an indicative site plan to indicate what could be achieved on the site. It aims to show how 2 dwellings could be developed, but this is not part of the application itself. This slide is taken from the arboricultural report, which is submitted with the planning application. And of course, it is based on the layout that is shown indicatively. I wanted to include this for members so that you could see the location of the 2 trees which are proposed to be felled, which are these 2 trees here, category C trees, so not good quality trees. And then the report also refers to T11 here, which is located outside the site but overhangs the site to a degree. And you'll also see from your report that there are conditions requiring measures to ensure the protection of all the trees within and around the site during the development of the proposal. Indicative floor plans there, very much just indicating the size and scale of the dwellings that is in mind at the moment. Again, just to be absolutely clear with members, that does not form part of the proposal before you this evening. And you'll see from your report that that considers all of the planning considerations. Particular points that I'd highlight for members are the principle of residential development of this site is established by that appeal decision, and we can't really get away from that, I'm afraid. In policy terms, there isn't considered to be any objection to the proposal. The extent and nature of the proposal, as I've summarised, is reduced from previous submissions, and it is, in officers' view, considered to provide an effective use of the land in a manner which is appropriate in planning and highways terms. The visibility that are necessary can be achieved whilst retaining the frontage hedgerow. We've talked a little bit about the trees that are to be retained and the two that are to be removed. And again, you'll see from your report that there's a range of conditions proposed to ensure compliance with a range of matters, sustainability, biodiversity requirements, conditions to retain and protect trees, and to address any contamination should it be found on the site. And therefore, Chair, the recommendation is that planning permission be granted.
Thank you. We have 4 speakers. We'll start off with Mr. David Keough. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I would like to open with a food for thought. How does an ancient orchard in the Green Belt Conservation Area of Stoneleigh Village, with its wonderful, abundant wildlife, a lot of which are protected, become 2 large, 2-storey detached houses in 4 years? Now, I refer to the H11 on the agenda, and the local planning policy NE4 landscape states that rural exceptional infill sites are for affordable housing to meet specific local community needs, i.e. first-time buyers or downsizing, and that's outlined in the publication draft of Warwick District Council consultations. Now, the Warwick District Council describes Stoneleigh Village's buildings as fairly small scale in nature. The conservation area appraisal clearly states that any future development should maintain the small scale of the buildings of this area, as further properties would begin to destroy the character of the existing mix of buildings. So at what point does 2 large detached 2-storey houses constitute affordable housing for first-time buyers, when the average values of houses of a similar size within the village is upward of £725,000? On to parking and highway safety. There appears to be 2 conflicting traffic speed surveys submitted by the Highways Agency for this application. The latest one recording 25.6 and 39.3 miles per hour in a north-south direction, compared to the previous one of up to 29.8 miles per hour. Now, these current figures would make this application non-compliant with DRMB, which is the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges, where the maximum speed for a 47-metre splay for this type of road is 25 miles an hour. Now, this ties in with just the simple refuse collection going in and off site. You may be interested to know, or not, that an 11-metre long HGV refuse vehicle has a turning circle of 20 metres. The proposed site driveway dimensions when residents' vehicles are in their allotted bays is just 6.4 metres. Therefore, the weekly refuse collection lorries would have to reverse in, essentially blocking both lanes of a 40-mile-an-hour trunk road in order to be able to leave the property safely and in a forward gear.
Can you draw your remarks to a close, please? You've had your time.
Sorry?
You've had your time.
Oh, right, sorry. And I'll just conclude that in all, the safety measures of this road displays and the building site would make a very, very dangerous environment for the residents of the village and other people.
Thank you. Now call Mr. John Miller. Again, you have 3 minutes when you start. You have 3 minutes when you start.
Okay. This ancient orchard, which was purchased for by the owner of the property at the moment, right, was what it was. You know, a natural habitat for animals, smothered in trees, natural drainage, right?
which is going to be gone when it's been developed, because the houses along that road are actually flooding, the river's flooding, should I say, more and more and more, because I live next door to it, right? So this natural habitat or natural drainage, whatever you want to call it, is created, there'll be less drainage. That's my opinion anyway, and probably factual as well. When this gentleman purchased the property, I think he applied for a potting shed, right? Then a small bungalow for personal reasons, because I think he said his wife was not well of some description. Then from then, after getting a small bungalow granted after refusals, then these two monstrous houses, right, have been recommended by whoever it is, the appeals gentleman, and the highways have rejected it once, right, and I can't see any difference now. The edge is still there, so it's going to be less visual when you drive on the main road, and the land is actually falls away. So when you drive onto the main road, it's not very good for looking at, right, you know, for getting out on the main road. The footpath, I jog down it every day, twice a day, morning and at night, and when trucks are parked on the footpath, when they develop the site, which I think is undevelopable, I think it's illegal, anything over 7.5 tons to park on a footpath, right? Because pedestrians walking past, you know, they've got to pull out onto the main road, walk past with a pram or wherever it is, or wheel. And cars are coming around the bend, the blind bend, you know, from the Leamington side, or coming down from the Coventry side, right? At 50 miles an hour, going down to 40, then to 30. So if there's a smallest car there which is broken down, the smallest car in front of that full side, right, it would be very dangerous. Never mind a truck, never mind vehicles, you know, for developing the site, right? Which I can't understand looking at that photograph. Where are you going to put the vehicles for developing it? It's an impossibility. We're talking about piling it, right, for concrete. We're talking about concrete lorries. We're talking about excavating it, right? I've done it for 45 years. I know a little bit of what I'm talking about, right? It can't be done unless you park on the main road or on the footpath, right? Which is causing obstruction to the footpath and in danger to people walking down the road on the footpath. There's a white line there, right, which I think is something that deters people from parking there, right? You've got a blind bend one side. You've got the A46, I think it's called, where they come through Stoneleigh Village, right, which is another access point. So you've got the blind bend, the access through Stoneleigh Village, the main road coming from Coventry, right, and then somebody's going to try and develop that site. If I'm not mistaken, the chap who owns it has said as soon as it's passed, or if it's passed, he's going to sell it, which then he has no responsibility of it. Then the responsibility then will either be on the planners, on the highways, or on the developer, right? And if there's accidents, I know my time's up. If the accidents,
please.
Pardon?
Can you draw your remarks to a close? You're over time.
Pardon?
You're over time.
Yeah, I know that, right? But
So do
I'm
I.
just saying, thank you
Can you
very much.
stop?
But what I'm going to say to you is this, is that if there's a fatality or an accident, right, I was taught by an old lady, which was my mother, prevention's better than the cure.
Mr. George Burton, you have 3 minutes when you start.
Thank you, Chair, for providing the opportunity to speak in reinforcement of the Chief Officer's recommendation of approval. This is a proposal that has seen various iterations over a period of around 10 years, most significantly with the approval of a dwelling at appeal following a 2018 application. Since this time, 2 2023 applications have been refused. Firstly, an application for 2 dwellings which the LPA considered would have resulted in less than substantial harm to the significance of the conservation area by reason of its excessive scale, bulk and massing, poor highway safety due to lack of adequate visibility displays, potential for impact on protected species due to a lack of evidence, and no demonstrated biodiversity net gain. The second application sought to address those issues and, in seeking consent for access only with an engineered access design, the number of reasons for refusal was reduced to 2. Number 1, BNG again, and 2, lack of evidence that net zero targets could be met. The proposal we are discussing here this evening continues that flow toward a compliant scheme with, again, access only for detailed approval. So what this scheme does that others have not is address the BNG situation by working closely with Warwick District's consultee at the county, It has not been simple to find a solution, but by seeking to bring what was an orchard, sadly neglected for many years, back into use, in strict accordance with current Natural England guidance, a priority habitat of traditional orchard would be established. A twofold win with 10% biodiversity net gain also achieved per policy. Further, we have also been able to establish, by employing energy experts, UK building compliance, and with additional detail by way of indicative proposed residential layout, that net zero requirements would be met. The proposed development zone lies outside critical flood zones 2 and 3. The acceptability of limited infilling in the green belt has previously been debated and agreed as policy compliant for up to 2 dwellings. Both applicant and officers are in clear agreement that 2 dwellings are acceptable in principle and could be satisfactorily accommodated, as would befit the conservation area, with no objection from the LPA's expert conservation officer on the matter. And all of the factors, such as amenity provision and impacts, parking, waste removal, etc., are agreed as capable of being addressed with this scheme at a future reserve matter stage. Chair, there is very little more I can offer other than to state that this is a clearly well-considered application which has taken on board and addressed all previously mooted factors, both negative and positive, in presenting this compliant proposal to the committee this evening, following thorough scrutiny at a time when now also a 5-year housing supply cannot be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call on our final speaker on this, Councillor Josh Payne, White District Council.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to come tonight, please, to back up those residents who've objected with their objections and with their concerns about this application. I just want to stress, first of all, that it is within Stoneleigh Conservation Area, and I believe that, on balance, permission should be refused because it's an area that has a special historical and a special conservation interest, or conservation significance, I should say. Reading through the report and through the objections, there were 2 concerns that stood out for me as the ward councillor, relating first to highways and secondly to biodiversity. Firstly, on highways, please don't take me the wrong way. I completely respect and acknowledge the advice that has been given to committee members about the speeds of vehicles on the road, and that in the view of highways, those don't constitute a reason to object and refuse planning permission. But so I'm not questioning the advice being given, but I just wanted to add my own perspective on that as the ward councillor, because I would say, in terms of the contact I receive from constituents, the overall traffic issues in Stoneleigh and around the junction where this application is very near, well, they're probably in the top 5 list of issues and concerns that I get expressed to me. So there is a very serious ongoing issue with the level of traffic in Stoneleigh. And that doesn't relate just to the speed alone of the vehicles, it relates to the type of traffic going through, because a lot of the complaints are about HGVs going through the village. And of course, with HGV vehicles being of a certain size, they may be travelling slowly as County Highways acknowledges, but they can still provide a visibility risk because of the obstruction of the view, potentially. With biodiversity, reading through the report, it mentions the previous applications, and it seems to be saying to me that one of the main obstacles the applicant has to overcome to get this approved is to demonstrate the 10% biodiversity net gain. And this has been mentioned by the constituents I have who are objecting, referring to the trees and the very rich wildlife that's found in that part of Stoneleigh near the river. I just feel slightly uncomfortable with what's been said in the report, in that the applicant needs to demonstrate the 10% gain to get permission granted, but that seems to be displaced into the reserved matters part of the application, and I would just expect a little more detail from the applicant that is specific about what they're actually going to do to address biodiversity and be absolutely certain they can secure that net gain. So for those reasons, I support what the objectors have said in their submissions, and I would ask Planning Committee please to refuse this, looking at all the detail. Thank you.
Thank you. Now move on to members. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report. I've got a couple of questions for clarification to start with. Just so that I understand correctly, when this was refused last time under 23-1605, that was not when it came to Planning Committee, it was done under delegated authority. Am I correct in that?
Yes, that's correct. It was a delegated decision.
And am I also right, because one of the speakers raised concerns about waste refuse collection, that my reading of the waste management statement not raising any objection was because they would be collecting from the curbside. Is that also correct?
That's my understanding as well, Councillor, yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. The only thing that I can't see, and apologies, I should have raised this before the meeting, I can't see a condition about a construction management plan being required. Would that come through at reserved matters stage, or would it be reasonable to expect a construction management plan condition to appear at outline stage? I'm particularly concerned because this is a major route to and from Coventry in the morning, and causing chaos with construction vehicles parked on the side of the road at rush hour time particularly worries me.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Construction management plan isn't proposed by officers. Were the committee to feel that that was necessary, appropriate, now would be the time to be applying that condition. So should members resolve to grant planning permission and consider that an additional condition is required for a construction management plan, that would be entirely reasonable.
Thank you for that clarification. Would it also be reasonable to include within that some times of operation outside of which that the construction management couldn't be taking place? I'm particularly concerned about morning and evening rush hour.
Yes, I mean, construction management plans do often contain requirements or proposals around the timing of development. It can often be hours of the day, it can be which particular days of the week as well. You know, sometimes trying to avoid Sundays and bank holidays, for example. So, yes, you would expect, as a matter of routine, a construction management plan to include those sorts of details.
Councillor Hazelwood.
Thank you. I've got three questions, if I may. So the first one is about, in the report, this follows on from comments that speakers made. It says the proposal is considered to preserve the character of the conservation area, and I wondered if you could just say a little bit more about that. Let's take them in turn.
Yeah, that is a matter of judgment, of course, Councillor. So at this stage, we're dealing with an outline application, albeit that the applicant has submitted this plan to show how the development could come forward on the site. Now, given the retention of the hedgerow, given the way that the developable area has been rationalised from some of the previous proposals that you've seen, given that the remainder of the land outside of the red line, but of course under the control of the applicant, is proposed to be retained as is, as part of this proposal, officers feel that a development of that scale, which is different to the scale that was refused 2 applications ago, officers feel that that could be brought forward in a way that would be acceptable within the context the conservation area. Of course, the proof will be in the pudding. You know, if outline planning permission is granted, that will then have to be demonstrated in detail as part of any future reserved matters application. At this point, the officer view is that we believe that is possible.
Okay, thank you. My second question was, I think one of the speakers said that this current proposal fully addresses the reasons why earlier proposals were turned down, and particularly things around highway safety, zero carbon impacts and the biodiversity net. Okay. Can you just confirm that that is your understanding or your interpretation of the proposal?
Yes, absolutely. And I think what we've seen through the, if you like, the chain of proposals is the issues whittled down bit by bit. So yeah, we've had earlier proposals where there were a range of objections, and then coming down to the most recent proposals where the objections were around sustainability, the net zero carbon approach, and ecology, the biodiversity net gain. So that was really at that point a case of there just not being sufficient information, or the approach not set out in the right way at that time. Officers feel that that is no longer the case, and you'll see that there are conditions, and indeed a Section 106 agreement, proposed to ensure that the development, you know, delivers in terms of the biodiversity net gain, which it has to do, and also delivers in terms of the requirements of the net zero carbon DPD.
Okay, thank you. And my third question was about the concerns raised about highway safety. And I think you said that there's a 30-mile-an-hour limit in Stoneleigh Village, and it's 40 mile an hour outside of that. But this proposal essentially extends the village perimeter. It's attached to the village. So is it not possible to ask highways to consider moving the 30-mile-an-hour zone that bit further down the road, just to reduce the speed?
Members could ask the Highways Authority to do that, but that isn't something that we could require as part of this proposal. As I explained in the presentation, the speed limit in the immediate vicinity of the application site is 40 miles an hour. You've seen from your report reference to a speed survey that was undertaken, and that was undertaken over a period of 7 days, and that was used by the Highways Authority to inform their assessment of the proposal, and their view is that there is no highway safety objection to this proposal within the context of the current circumstances, which would include the speed limit as it currently is.
So to change the speed limit, you'd probably have to go back after the houses were built and argue that it's now part of the built environment rather than beforehand.
Yes, that would need to be a request that would need to sit outside of the consideration of this
process. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, I think Councillor Dixon's actually asked my question, but I would ask that if we do approve, we should add the condition about a construction management plan as suggested by Mr. Fisher.
Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. I think you have briefly touched on about the conservation area impact, and I was trying to understand what was the difference between previous applications 2023, where that was a factor that in part of the refusal. Is it the fact the site layout has been reduced because from the previous proposals, you know, and also there was a mention of protected species being a reason, which doesn't seem to have been covered in this one. So have these points been addressed by the fact it's a reduced site layout? And also, the scale of the houses, which public speakers mentioned, whether that's out of character of the village as well. Again, that to me is a consideration, but you know, I understand that maybe that's not part of the site layout plan and outline at this stage, but certainly the scale of the houses, to me, should be a consideration in supporting this in terms of whether it's with the village. That's really 2 or 3 points there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for those questions. So, if it is okay, I will just run through the history again very briefly. So, this is the proposal from 2018, which was for a single property. The scale of the site, or the extent of the site, covers the whole of the land parcel, as you can see by the extent of the red line. Officers recommended and indeed refused planning permission for that proposal for a range of reasons. However, that was overturned on appeal, and part of the reasoning behind that from the inspector was that the principle of residential development in this location, albeit not within the village envelope, but because it is immediately adjacent to it, that it can be treated as being part of the village. If we then move on a few years to the first of the 2023 proposals, I think, Councillor, this might be the one you were referring to. So that shows two large dwellings positioned across the whole site. It includes the garden areas for those dwellings run right down to the river, and this proposal included the loss of significantly more trees than is proposed as part of the application that is before you this evening. Following that, so that was a refusal of that proposal. We then had this proposal later on in 2023, which wasn't proposing to set the layout of the site. It was still looking at the principle, and it did, of course, cover the whole of that land parcel. This proposal was looking to discharge just the means of access, and the means of access there is as is proposed before you now. And what's noteworthy is that as part of this proposal, there wasn't a concern about the impact on the conservation area. The earlier proposal showed something more specific, which it was felt wasn't acceptable. That clearly isn't the case here. There also wasn't an objection here on highway safety grounds. And I think, as I explained a few minutes ago, the real concerns with this proposal were around the ecological, so the biodiversity net gain, and the net zero carbon impacts, and how they weren't dealt with as part of that proposal. So what we've seen is a series of planning applications, bit by bit, reduced down the areas of concern. And then when we come to the application before us this evening, whereas the other proposals included the whole of the site, if you like, as the developable area, this proposal doesn't do that. This proposal is very clear on the limited extent of any trees to be removed as part of the scheme. Previous schemes, it was implicit that there would be more trees and vegetation removed, and sort of consolidating the extent of the proposals within just that part of the wider land parcel, and the way that the two dwellings there are indicated that they might be brought forward for officers has moved a significant way from where we started, and that's why the recommendation tonight is as it is. In terms of your other point, Councillor, it is really important that if any development does come forward, that it does recognise the features and the characteristics of the conservation area, And what we're saying here is that we as officers believe that there is a scheme that can do that. However, we're not looking at this in that much detail this evening, and were planning committee to grant planning permission at the point at which the reserve matters comes in, that would need to be looked at very, very carefully. And indeed, you know, you could have an outline permission, you might get a reserve matters proposal that simply isn't acceptable for a range of reasons. So it doesn't automatically follow that, you know, the reserve matters would be granted. But yes, that is important, and I think that will be focused on in more detail should committee grant planning permission, and then should a reserve matters proposal come forward. That was a lot of words. I hope that helped to answer your question.
Councillor Margaret.
Thank you. So just to be clear, this is a reserve matter, this is an outline application purely about the access. So all the stuff about trees, the layout of the houses, all of that really tonight is completely irrelevant. Is that what we're saying?
I wouldn't say it was irrelevant, because the proposal, the description of the development is for 2 dwellings, the applicant has got to demonstrate that there is a way of developing 2 dwellings on this site that in overall terms could be acceptable in terms of the conservation area, could be acceptable in terms of, you know, retaining as many trees as possible, etc., etc. So yes, you're absolutely right. While we're not considering those specific details, if as officers, as the committee, you weren't satisfied that there is a way to develop 2 dwellings on this site in an acceptable way, that would be a potential objection to the proposal. That is not what officers are saying. You know, we're recommending approval because we think that can be achieved.
Okay. Related to that, would it, looking at the access and proving that the vehicles can access forwards off the site, which Highways said they can, it looked a bit dubious for one of the houses. Would it be reasonable to have a condition that asks for the turning, whatever you call it, the diagram? Would that be a reasonable condition to ask for?
Yes, it would. And in fact, again, what this proposal is about is demonstrating how it might be done. If you have a reserve matters application that is clearly looking to gain approval for a specific proposal, we would expect to see that sort of detail. That being said, the Highways Authority have been clear that they believe that the arrangement that's shown here would be acceptable, but we're not looking to approve that this evening. It's just the principle this evening.
Okay, so that condition would be done at reserve matters, so we don't need to worry about it now. Is that what you're saying?
If members feel strongly that it's really important that the reserve matters include sufficient details to demonstrate how vehicles would use the site, how they would enter the site, how they would leave the site. It is within your gift, and it would be appropriate, in my view, to include a condition that requires that. However, we would expect that that information would be provided anyway, and I'm not sure that you actually need a condition to do that, but that is something for members to consider.
So that will give us some reassurance. Can I just have one more point? I support the proposal for the restricting, what do we call it? Construction management plan. So to prevent construction vehicles parking on the road between, say, 9 and 4:30, and I guess I should declare an interest. I drive past every day, so yeah, I think we should have something along those lines.
Is it possible on this vehicles entering and leaving the site that we actually had a condition that vehicles had to leave the site in forward gear? We're not actually telling Highways what to do, we just sort of suggest.
I don't think that a proposal coming forward that didn't demonstrate that would be considered to be acceptable. So I don't think we need a condition, because the expectation, I'm quite sure that if a reserve matters proposal came in that didn't demonstrate the ability of vehicles to enter and leave the site in a forward gear, we'd have a very clear objection from the Highways Authority, and quite rightly. So that is an important consideration, but I would expect that any reserve matters application would have to include that information in any case.
Councillor Gifford.
Yes, I noted that the Conservation Officer neither supports nor opposes this application because he feels it needs to be decided on when it comes forward as a reserve matter. I have real concerns about the 10% getting the 10% net gain on biodiversity. I see the conditions number 6 and number 7. And particularly condition number 6 is very detailed about preserving. It's not even suggesting net gain, we're basically talking about protecting the species that may be there at the moment. But one of the things that slightly I'm trying to get my head around is you've got the red line around the application site. So is a 10% biodiversity net gain within that red line? Or is it in the land owned by the applicant?
That's an interesting question. My instinct is that it is within the red line because that is the application site. You'll see, Councillor Gifford, from the report that the County Council Ecology team are satisfied with the approach. You'll note that there is also a Section 106 agreement proposed. So we don't know yet all of the ins and outs of how the biodiversity net gain will stack up. But the reality is that it has to, because it is a requirement, and that's why you've got a Section 106 agreement to ensure that that happens, and that's why you've also got planning conditions proposed that relate to that. So whether I'm correct or not, in terms of whether it's the red line or the red and the blue line, it will be dealt with appropriately, and there is a requirement that that be provided as part of the proposal.
So what we're deciding tonight is that if we approve this, we're saying we feel that 2 houses could be put there, and we can see that there are reasons that it would meet the biodiversity. There are ways and means that you could meet the biodiversity net gain. And if they can't do that in the reserve matters, then it would definitely have to be refused. Probably is that what you're saying?
If planning permission is granted tonight in outline, which is essentially the principle of 2 dwellings, plus fixing the access point, if planning permission is granted, one of the requirements of that is that 10% biodiversity net gain must be provided. And as I've just described, there's a range of measures proposed to ensure that that happens. So it's too early this evening to be thinking about the actual detail of what is involved in that. But what I can tell you, Councillor, is that, as I say, there are specific measures proposed as part of any planning permission that will ensure that that happens.
Thank you. I'm still very dubious as to whether if you have 2 houses here that you'd actually get the biodiversity net gain of 10%. I actually see almost the reverse, quite honestly, but I have real doubts about it. I don't see the real evidence in front of me. I see the conditions, and clearly they're very important to the county council. But I have real concerns as two houses on that site actually producing a biodiversity net gain. Anyway.
Condition 6 is about the strongest we've seen anywhere on calling for proposals. Councillor Luckhurst.
Thank you, Chair. I feel I might know the answer already, but I'll ask anyway. Councillor Ailsa was talking about we possibly conditioning a speed limit from County Do. Is there any remit within the committee to condition any speed calming measures? Is that a possibility, or is that, I can appreciate it's not a thing that the applicant would do themselves, that would be highways?
It isn't a possibility in this case because the Highways Authority don't consider that that is necessary and believe that the access proposals to the site and the vehicle movements that that would involve within this context are acceptable.
Seeing what happens once houses are built. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, I would like to propose that we grant planning permission in accordance with officers' recommendations with the conditions set out, with the additional condition about a construction management plan as proposed by Councillor Dixon.
Do I have a second? Councillor Dixon seconding that. So the proposal is as set out. We approve of the proposal as laid out with any additions that we've got. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous, that's 11. Oh, sorry, 10-1. Thank you, that is clearly carried. It's nearly 8 o'clock. Do you want to do the break now? Or just take this other one in quickly, which might take us a little bit over?
Might not be that quick.
With agenda item 8. And that then means we've dealt with all the speakers. So that's W/25/1088, land adjacent to Hermes House, 20 Coventry Road, Covington.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this application relates to a site known as Hermes House, which is on Coventry Road in Covington. And the proposal, as members will see from your report, is for the erection of 4 dwellings. The slide on the screen has been included just to help members to orientate themselves in terms of the location of the application site towards the north of the village. Hopefully you can all see that on the screen. And then this is a slightly enlarged version of that, just to show members how the site sits within the village of Covington. And you'll see from the report that this is part of a site. It's formal commercial, I think it was former office site. The application site was originally the car park or part of the car parking area for that use, which is now ceased. And as you'll also see from the report, the main building at the site is proposed and has permission to change its use to residential apartment use. But just to be clear, this evening, the application site is the element edged in red on the screen at the moment. And just a few shots of the site and surroundings. So again, this is a site where the frontage is very well treed, as you can see from that photograph. I don't think that the trees actually are located in the site itself. They may well be highway trees, but you'll note that the proposals are very clear on retaining the trees and ensuring their protection. So this is the frontage of the site here. You can see in this photograph Hermes House, which is the original and still existing office building, which is in the process, I understand, of being converted to a residential use. A few shots here, again, just along the highway. The red arrows there are indicating the approximate location of the site. And then some photographs from within the site, just indicating the area where the new dwellings are proposed. And again, you can see the existing office block and a former office block and the surrounding residential development. And this is the proposal before members this evening, which is for 2 pairs, so that's 4 3-bedroomed semi-detached properties, laid out as indicated on the screen there, with parking to the front, gardens to the rear, and essentially filling the existing gap between the existing building here with adjacent properties as they are adjacent to the site in this location here. We've got the new development that's come forward across the other side of Coventry Road, facing towards the application site, and then existing residential development adjacent to the site at the rear as well. These are the floor plans and elevations of the proposals. And so in terms of the officer perspective on this, that's set out in great detail in your report. But again, I would highlight that in policy terms, there's not considered to be any objection to the proposal. Officers feel that it provides an effective use of land, which is acceptable in planning and highways terms. As I've mentioned, those really substantial trees along the site frontage are proposed to be retained. And you'll see that there are a range of conditions proposed to ensure compliance with a range of different issues. Sustainability, again, biodiversity requirements, the retention and protection of the trees. Again, there's a condition designed to deal with any contamination that might be found at the site, and also a condition to ensure the provision of a pedestrian link from the site to the highway. And that's why, Chair, the recommendation is that planning permission be granted.
Thank you. We have 3 speakers. First one is Mr. Ian Posser, and you have 3 minutes from when you start.
Thank you, Chair. I've been asked by Mr and Mrs Bosworth, who live at 2 Cotton Mill Spinney, which lies along the northern boundary of the application site, to speak on their behalf, as I am a retired planning officer. Mr and Mrs Bosworth have lived in their house for over 45 years, and until quite recently, they looked out over the Coventry Road onto open land designated as Greenbelt. The current report states that Mr and Mrs Bosworth's garden is at a lower level than the application site. In fact, their house and much of their garden would sit more than a metre below the level of the proposed development. The effect of 2-storey houses built just a metre from their boundary would therefore be profound. Apart from the overwhelming visual intrusion, the new houses will block sunlight to Mr and Mrs Bosworth's house. Their bedroom, which faces the application site, the roof light of their single-storey kitchen, and much of their garden will be almost permanently in shade. Notwithstanding this, council officers consider that the proposed development is acceptable. However, the report provides no clear explanation as to how this conclusion has been reached. It appears to be entirely contrary to paragraph 135F of the National Planning Policy Framework, which requires development to maintain a high standard of amenity for existing occupiers of land, and Local Plan Policy BE3, which states that development will not be permitted, which has an unacceptable adverse impact on the amenity of nearby residents, taking account of the loss of sunlight, daylight, and visual amenity. In addition, the report makes no reference to paragraph 39 of the National Planning Policy Framework, which requires planning authorities to work proactively with developers to bring about improvements to their proposals to reduce any environmental impact. The report provides no indication of any attempt to reduce potential harm to neighbouring property beyond the scheme as originally proposed. Instead, the report refers to the so-called fallback position of the prior approval conversion of the office building. It is suggested, therefore, that the current application must be considered independently of the office conversion, limiting changes that might be made to the proposals. However, the current application is entirely dependent upon changes within the curtilage of the office building. This curtilage is therefore outlined in blue on the current application plans, as can be seen, indicating that it remains in the control of the applicant. Council officers could therefore have negotiated a more acceptable layout for the Hermes House complex as a whole. Whereas such revisions might reduce the profitability of the development as currently proposed, it could have been ensured that 2 Cotton Mill Spinney will be far less detrimentally impacted and that much more adequate car parking for the occupants of the converted office building and their visitors could have been provided. Vehicle parking on curbs and green verges is already a significant problem on the Coventry Road within Covington. I would therefore urge the committee to reject the development of the application site until such times as a much more acceptable layout for the Hermes House complex has been negotiated, which properly takes account of its neighbours and surroundings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I call on Mrs Glenda Parks. And you have 3 minutes when you start.
Good evening, Chair, members, officers, and colleagues who are likely to be watching this on the web feed. I'm Glenda Parks, Planning Director at Tyler Parks Partnership, and I'm not retired. I'm grateful to speak in support and note the points made by the previous speaker. We have worked very closely with your officers for over 12 months to arrive at a point where no technical matters stand against the proposals and officers are happy to recommend approval. I would commend the report as a thorough assessment of the proposals and material considerations. Whilst objections have been raised, the proposal does comply with all the design standards, including the 45-degree code in terms of loss of light, which has been referenced by the previous speaker. It utilises a piece of brownfield land within a growth settlement and in a sustainable location. We are acutely aware we are all acutely aware of the under-delivery of housing and the need to boost supply. This proposal will make a contribution to supply, making better and more efficient use of what we have in the delivery of full houses. We also have an applicant who is literally waiting in the starting blocks to get on with the building. This is not a speculative proposal. I understand that the proposal will introduce change, but it will and still will be a lovely area and place to live. The delivery of full houses will fit comfortably within the character and grain of the area, in line with the conclusion of your officer's detailed assessment. In all the circumstances, it's hoped that members will support the proposal and agree the grant of consent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I just confirm that top of the plan is north?
Yes, Chair, I believe so, yes.
So south is at the bottom, east is to the right and west is to the left. So therefore the arc will run from one side to the other, not shading those buildings. Certainly not from midday, if not earlier. I thought we'd finished. Councillor Payne. Apologies.
Thank you, Chair. I had a couple of points which I believe I can put succinctly to the committee. Reading through the objections from residents and neighbours to this on the planning portal over the last couple of days, I'd just like to say to committee I agreed wholeheartedly with all of the concerns and reservations they were expressing. I couldn't find anything in the points they were making I would disagree with, and they seem to be putting their points in a measured way. The objections refer both to inadequate parking provision on the site and a loss of residential amenity and a loss of privacy for many of the properties, in particular the ones on Cotton Mill Spinney, whose back gardens will be adjacent to where the new housing is going. So I felt that the objectors did deserve some robust support with what they were saying. I'd like to stress to the committee that in terms of the loss of privacy and the loss of amenity, well, both for Cotton Mill Spinney and Woodland Way, which is over the road on the other side of Coventry Road, these parts of Cubbington are what I would describe as unusually tranquil and quiet. I've walked up and down Cotton Mill Spinney many times, and it is very much an undisturbed part of Cubbington. So any building and new properties in that area does have, I would argue, a significant impact on the peace of residents wishing to enjoy their back gardens. And before I conclude, I'd just like to stress as well that on the north side of Cotton Mill Spinney, they have quite recently had extra building there as well. So there are already new homes that have been put in around that part of Cubbington, in the next street to them, essentially. So I would ask that committee refuses, but if you do decide to approve, I would just like to ask committee please to look through with care and consideration the objections that residents have expressed, and please to take into account those concerns in anything that you say about the planning conditions and the Section 106 agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. I won't go through where the sun is again. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the distance from the house on Cotton Mill Spinney, could we have a confirmation about the separation distances between that and the new dwellings? Because clearly this is of concern to the residents.
Yes, Councillor. Are you asking about the dwellings at the rear or at the side?
The dwellings at the rear, I think that was the one that was concerned to the
So
speaker.
the requirement, well, the expectation in our residential design guides is that there be a minimum back-to-back distance of 21 metres. And this exceeds that. I don't have a specific measurement, but I am assured by the case officer that this is in excess of that distance and therefore considered acceptable in that regard.
Thank you.
Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder, Mr Fisher, if you could go back to the slide that shows the floor plans, elevations. They're not, yes, that one. The windows upstairs in the proposed side elevations, which would be looking out over properties in Cotton Mill, Spinney, am I correct in that?
The windows in these windows, they are windows to bathrooms. One's to an ensuite, one normally be obscurely glazed, and being in the side elevation as well wouldn't normally be considered to result in any significant impact on adjoining amenity.
Thank you. That's all I wanted reassurance about.
Councillor Hazelwood.
Yeah, the first speaker talked about the impact on the neighbouring property. I think it was 2 Copper Mill Spinney, which I understood to be the house to the north. That one, I think, yes. And he talked about the substantial impact this development would have on that. It's not really referenced in your report. So could you comment on whether you think there is a substantial impact or not, or what mitigations could be offered if there were?
Yeah, I think what the report does mention, Councillor, is that the relationship to those properties is considered to be acceptable. So the speaker was correct in that the application site is a metre higher than the adjacent property. What we have in the adjacent property is main rear windows in the main part of the rear of that property. And what you'll see here on the plan is in diagrammatic form the 45-degree line that another one of the speakers referred to, which essentially is one of the tools that we use to try and judge whether the harm from a building or an extension that projects behind something else is so severe that it wouldn't be acceptable in planning terms. So what we can see is that the proposed buildings don't breach that 45-degree line. They, the new building does project to the rear, at the side, to the rear of the existing property. There will inevitably be a degree of impact, but the judgment that we're making isn't whether there is or isn't any impact. It's the scale of that harm. And, notwithstanding that change in levels, officers are very clear that relationship doesn't result in an impact that is so severe that we should be refusing planning permission.
And that's the visibility, which I understand. There was specific concern about loss of light. Is that is that a consideration that you've considered and thought it not substantial?
That is part of the assessment that officers have made, and that is when we use the 45-degree guideline, that is partly what informs that. I think that inevitably there will be a degree of loss of light to the adjoining property. Officers are clear that isn't sufficient to merit refusal of planning permission.
Councillor Matetsky.
Thank you, Chair. I actually think this planning application is very straightforward. There's been some comments made about loss of privacy and stuff. When you actually look at Cotton Mill, Spinney anyway, you can see the way the houses go around. There's properties backing onto them, sideways on. This isn't anything different. That's already there. And so I'm going to propose that we accept the recommendations as laid out with the conditions in the report.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? going to have a second. So, Councillor Kennedy. Are you seconding or?
Sorry, yes, I'm seconding.
Right. So we do have a proposed by Councillor Matetsky, seconded by Councillor Kennedy. All those in favour of granting, please show. That certainly is 11. Thank you very much. No, didn't see you. 10, okay. One against. Can't see that hand. Right, we'll now adjourn for 10 minutes. Okay, thank you for coming back, councillors. We now move on to agenda item 6, which is an unusual one. It's W/25/0100, Chapel Haven, Narrow Lane, Lowsonford, Solly Holm. This has been called in because Rowington Parish Council objected and it was recommended for approval. They haven't turned up to meet, so do members wish to see the presentation or not? No? So we then move on that one to vote in line with the recommendations. All those in favour?
Oh, do you need a proposer?
Proposer and seconder, please. Proposers, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Luckhurst will do for the second one.
Sorry, again, Chair. Just through you, just to confirm that that proposal includes the additional condition and the update to the condition as set out in the proposal, in the update report.
It does. I knew it would. All those in favour? Thank you. That is 11 this time. Thank you. Agenda item 7, another unusual one. W/25/0429, Ednam Meadow, the Cumsey, Pinley Green. This again has been called in by Rowington Parish Council when it was proposed for an approval which they objected to. Does anyone wish to see the presentation? No. Can I have a proposer and seconder, please, for whatever you want to do? We're approving this?
We were sent the presentations before. I looked at the presentations, excellent presentation, and I feel quite happy to approve this application.
Thank you. No additional notes. So this is in line with the recommendations set out in the report. Although, proposer? Did I have a proposer? Councillor Gifford proposing, seconder. Councillor Dixon will do. All those in favour of accepting, thank you. That's clearly carried. Now move on to agenda item 10, which is W/25/1546, Horizon House, Millers Road, Warwick.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for a change of use from the previous use, which was a vehicle rentals unit, and the proposed use is a gym with the associated off-street parking on Lock Lane. This is a retrospective application. The use is already commenced and has been for some time. So this is the application site on the screen at the bottom kind of right of that plan, fronting Millers Road. So it's part of the Millers Road Industrial Estate. It was prior to the vehicle rental unit use. It was an industrial use, a B-class use. We do have a policy in the local plan EC3 which seeks to protect employment uses, which is defined in the local plan as B-class uses. So in terms of the principle of the change of use, the vehicle rental unit was a sui generis use, not a B-class use. So the principle of losing that use to a gym is acceptable. The red line in the top left corner, that's a separate site, Lock Lane, which has previously been granted planning permission under delegated powers for use as a car park in association with this proposal. Back in last year, an application came in for this to regularise this change of use, and it was going to be refused under delegated powers due to insufficient parking. And as a result of that, that was withdrawn, and the application has come forward. The Lock Lane site came forward because that became available for the applicant, and now this application is being reassessed with the benefit of that additional parking being available for the site. So an aerial image there, so you can see the gym, Foundry Gym Warwick. It's become, as well as an established use, it's existing, and there's the Lock Lane car park on the other side. There is on-site parking as well within the red line of the application site to the frontage there. This shows you the approved parking, which was subject to the application reference 25/1755 on Lock Lane, where it can accommodate 52 spaces. And then the walking distance between the two sites is approximately 200 metres, which is considered to be a reasonable walking distance in planning terms. That shows you some photos of the gym and the surrounding street scene. So still of a very industrial nature. There's not been any change to the appearance of the building, save for the sign. And that's the photos of the car park at Lock Lane. So in summary, the proposal is the change of use is acceptable in principle in terms of policy EC3, and the proposed use has been directed to a sustainable location. In terms of impact on neighbours, there has been concerns raised because there is residential uses across the road and in the general locality. Environmental health have raised no objection, subject to conditions to secure noise management plan. And the Highways Authority have raised no objection because of the on-site parking, the parking on Lock Lane, and adequate capacity within on-street parking. So as a combination of those three is considered to be adequate parking, and therefore it's recommended for approval.
Thank you. Members, Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report. It's just one minor question, and apologies, I should have raised it before. Lock Lane has street lights on it, and I'm conscious that this is a 24-hour gym that's there, and it's just a safety concern about whether those street lights will stay on if people are accessing the gym when it's dark.
Yes, I mean the officer has noted that that footpath there is a footpath that links the two, and that it is lit. I can't tell you whether they are operational 24 hours a day though. My assumption is that they are, but I can't tell you for certain.
Councillor Harrison.
Obviously, as you say, this is retrospective planning, and actually I recognise this. I have a declared interest. My boys go use this gym. Have there been any? The objections have been about, possibility of noise and disturbance, and that. Have there been any actual complaints up to now since it was converted to a gym from neighbouring residents? Thanks.
I'm not aware that they would be directed to the Environmental Health Department, but it's certainly not a statutory noise nuisance. But because of the 24-hour nature of the use, part of the noise mitigation measures is a limit on the use of music within the site. So it's limited to, I think, 70 decibels. Through a mechanism of having the speaker units within locked cages, and then so staff can't increase the volume. That's part of the mitigation.
Anyone else? Can I have a proposal and seconder for whatever? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. I am content to propose this subject to the conditions that are in the report.
Councillor Knight, were you seconding? All those in favour of the recommendation set out? That's clearly carried, 11-0. Thank you. Final item for discussion or debate. W/26/0105, 2 Cannon Young Road, Whitnash.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for the demolition of an existing outbuilding and a shed, and then replacement with a proposed outbuilding. The reason this application has become before members is because the applicant is related to a member of staff at Warwick District Council. There's been no other objections from either neighbours or the town council. So that's the application site. It's one of a pair of semi-detached properties. As you can see, there's the garage to the side, adjacent to number 4. which is accessed from a drop curb from Cannon Young Road. It's generally quite a good sized plot. That shows you an aerial image. That edged in blue is the existing prefab concrete garage. And there's a timber shed behind it. Both of those are proposed to be removed. That's the elevations of the existing prefab garage. And that shows you a block plan of the proposed site plan, sorry, with the proposed garage. So the existing shed and the existing garage go and gets replaced by essentially a deeper garage that covers the extent of the garage and the existing shed. That shows you a floor plan of the proposal. And there's elevations. It's slightly taller than the current building, but it's built of brick, so it is an improvement on the prefab. That shows you the existing structure, so concrete sides, and that shows you in a street scene setting. So it's an improvement in design terms, being more suitable materials. Not an impact, no harm to the street scene. There is a 45-degree line breach from 13 and 15 Home Farm Crescent, but that is in excess of the 8 metres that's stipulated in the design guide. So due to that distance, it's considered that it wouldn't cause any harm in terms of light or outlook. And therefore the impact on neighbour amenities is also considered acceptable. The proposal is recommended for approval.
Councillor Gifford.
I would like to, this is a definite improvement on the existing structure. I would like to propose that we accept the go for grant as per the officer's recommendation.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Margrave. All those in favour of the recommendation as set out? That's 11-0. That's clearly carried. We now move on to the list of current planning enforcement and tree appeals.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a small number of points I would like to mention on this. The first point is right at the top of the report, which describes or summarises the proportion of planning appeals that are being allowed at the moment, contrary to our decision. That's currently at 45%, which is a little bit higher than I think as officers we would like. It is something that we are mindful of as managers, Sandic, myself and Rob Young, and something that we are monitoring. It is a little bit unusual for the proportion to be that high, and I think I would be more concerned if that presented itself as a long-term, ongoing scenario. So just to draw that to your attention, we've talked before in Planning Committee about the risk of this council being at risk of special measures. We are at the risk of special measures as we speak. And that is, as I've explained to members before, because the proportion of major development proposals that are being allowed on appeal exceeds the government threshold for that. This is a measure of the quality of decision making. So the government threshold is 10%. This council, we are at 10.9%. And the period, as I've indicated in the report, the period that is under review there is April 23 to March 25. So we're actually talking about a period that ended just over a year ago. The approach that, well, the way that this works is that councils are notified that they are at risk of special measures, and by my calculations, there are something in the order of 15 or so councils who will have had that letter, a number of councils whose performance is significantly above the threshold than ours. We have a period of time to respond to that letter and put forward the case for us not being put at special measures, which is a piece of work that I'm leading on. That response is due by Friday this week. I'm currently consulting with other colleagues on the response that we've drafted. The position is that we feel optimistic that we have a very strong case not to be placed in special measures. We've talked about that before, councillors, and I won't go into all the sort of ins and outs of that today, but you can rest assured that we are putting a stronger case forward as you would expect us to. So just drawing that to your attention. And then finally, if we scroll down towards the bottom of the report, under enforcement appeals, we've had a decision on a case for the site, which is known as Meadow Cottage in Hill Wootton, which is an enforcement case that has been going on for somewhere between 10 and 15 years. Again, I'm not going to endeavour to explain to members why that would be the case. It's a case which is about a very significant outbuilding as part of the site of a residential dwelling. It's the outbuilding itself is many times larger than the actual host dwelling, and it is a case that clearly unacceptable in planning terms, and this report is just flagging that the enforcement notice there was subject of an appeal. That appeal was dismissed, which means that the enforcement notice was upheld, and partial awards have been awarded against the appellant because of their conduct in this matter. And I say all of that because I know that enforcement is a really important issue for this council, and it will continue to be. And I know that there are many cases where speed is really, really important. But it's really just to sort of make the point that sometimes it's a little bit of a long game, and persistence in planning enforcement can often pay off, even after that lengthy a period of time. So it's a very unusual case. I just wanted to draw that to your attention, and happy to take any comments or questions.
Councillor Texton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's quite interesting this report has come forward, because it's something I think, one thing I always do look at is when we get an email of appeals, and I was actually noticing that a high percentage were being upheld. So it was something I was thinking of asking the portfolio holder anyway for historical data over the last number of years. You know, okay, we had a new council in 2023. You're going to expect, as a new council, you might have different. But now we're into coming to the end of the third year, we wouldn't actually expect that. I think we need to be careful with percentages, because if we refused one and it won appeal, that would be 100%. So we just need to be careful with percentages. But in this case, there is 25 out of 56, which is a little bit worrying. And I think questions need to be asked. Why? Why is the committee going against officer recommendation? And I'm the first one to say that officers don't always get it right, as you know. When I've been on these committees, I quite often challenge the officers on this, but to have so many, I think we need to really look why. Is it a perception? Is it we're not applying standards correctly? I think that's what needs to happen. You know, a deep dive needs to happen, and understanding what's going wrong, and especially when it's against officer recommendations, and then the appeal is won. You know, I can, and there's certain instances I can think. You know, I was on this planning committee when there was the application on Stratford Road, and it was all car parking, and I argued against that quite. And I was saying you were using that parking standard incorrectly. And I walked out of here, and whoever was here, I said, that is going to be approved under appeal. And it was. You know, it didn't take rocket science to know that we were misapplying the parking policy. And it was too blinkered, you know, didn't see what we were looking at. So that's the kind of thing we really need to look at.
Can I respond, Chair? Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I mean, this is something that we're keeping under review as officers, but absolutely, if you would like to raise that, that would give us the opportunity to look into that and sort of provide a response in a bit more detail. And it is interesting what you say about percentages and statistics, and they're good, but you need to be a little bit cautious. And you know, the situation we find ourselves in with the risk of special measures. So that has come about because there are 6 decisions out of 55 where the appeal on a major development has been allowed. It doesn't include that one you just referred to, by the way. But the reality is, if it was one less decision, we would be under the threshold. So you're actually talking about the difference of one case, and we would all hope that common sense would prevail in that. But yeah, I mean, it's an important area for us, and as I say, we are keeping this under review. Sometimes we see trends in the decisions that are made by the planning inspectorate, which feel slightly unexpected to us, so it's important to sort of monitor that as well. We make our very best endeavours to get it right all of the time, but we have to acknowledge that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen with anybody, of course.
Any other questions? No, in that case, we've completed all our business, so I declare the meeting closed at more or less 5 to 9.